this holiday season is all messed up because Thanksgiving is so late. Because Christmas Eve is 2 weeks from tomorrow, and I'm not ready at all.
Yeah, I'm very much feeling under assault right now with all the planning and purchasing I have to do to catch up.
Taking your first step into a larger
world. Start putting those Amazon orders out right now.
You got to travel, right, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm going out to San Francisco.
Oh yeah, okay. Chris, you don't have far to go.
No, right? I'm not traveling at all, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not even to Batavia?
Oh, that to me is barely traveling. Okay. Technically, I'll be going out there for family, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's travel. You have to go more than 10 miles. Ryan, do you have to travel much?
No, it's all around my neighborhood, so that's easy.
I saw online that you went to the John Hughes High School.
There's numerous. I actually said I grew up in the John Hughes Film District, as we call it. So, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles, Home Alone, Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I was an extra.
I've checked out the Home Alone house, and every time it's both cool and a little humbling because it's much smaller than you expect it to be because of all the camera trickery they do with the movie. And then it also makes you think, how did they get all these interior shots that seem so big and whatever, which is, there we have it. They were filming those in a gym. It's much more roomy. So
no spoilers if you want to watch that, but it was really good.
Yeah.
It's the other one that I liked a lot was Ghostbusters.
There's a Die Hard one as well, right?
There's a Die Hard one. I haven't started one.
I'm into that. Die Hard Christmas movie.
It is a Christmas movie. Don't let the haters. I don't listen to the haters. It is a Christmas movie.
I saw the one that said Die Hard is a Harry Potter movie. You've got John McClane trying to invisibly avoid Professor Snape through the course of the entire movie.
Nice. Yeah, that is the American equivalent of a Hogwarts. Of course, I was about to get real dark real quick, so never mind.
Yippee-ki-yay that I'm up to no good.
Yeah. But
machine guns managed.
Oh, quick question. While we're on, that'd be a great poster.
Yeah.
While we are on the topic, what are non-traditional movies that you guys watch for Christmas that you classify as Christmas movies? So Die Hard is kind of an example. For me, the Harry Potter movies aren't technically Christmas movies, but I always watch them around Christmas time.
They always feel like Halloween movies to me.
Thanksgiving is when they all came out.
Yeah.
Initially.
Also, Batman Returns, another good one.
A one that I've not watched in a long while, but is Christmas full on, is The Ref. With Dennis Leary and oh my God, the guy from House of Cards.
Kevin Spacey?
Kevin Spacey.
We don't say his name anymore.
He's been collected and removed from my memories.
Yeah, the Voldemort of there you go.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Nick, do you have any non-traditional Christmas movies?
I don't. I'm just traditional as hell with that. Like it's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is the best one of all time.
Yeah,
there's nothing compares to it. And to me, the closest number 2 classic to that is Elf.
Yeah, that's the most recent, like, very solid Christmas movie, I would say.
And it's not even that recent. It's like 20 years old. Not 20 years old. It's like 15 years old.
Yeah.
My kids stumbled onto this one that stars Martin Freeman of Hobbit fame and Black Panther fame. It's an animated series where Martin Freeman is a fat, not competent elf who uses Santa's time traveling thing, and it is a Back to the Future story where it is like there's like 3 versions of him all stepping on each other in multiple time travel timelines, and it is way more complex than it needs to be, and it's awesome.
And it's animated?
Yeah.
That's actually, that makes me feel like the Black Mirror guys would make a secret Black Mirror episode that starts off as a happy Christmas movie, but then halfway through it gets really dark and sinister.
There you go.
I can totally see that happening.
It's called Saving Santa.
Okay.
What if on Christmas Amazon bought you?
And a Peloton.
Oh no, that was a Black Mirror commercial. Yeah,
it didn't even need our joke.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone far enough without knowing our names. You are listening to Star Wars Loose Cannon, the subset of episodes that we're calling Ride the Blurrg, and this is Ride the Blurrg Chapter 5. What is this one called? The Gunslinger.
The Gunslinger.
I am Nick Oswald. With me is my intrepid co-host, Patrick Erbisol.
Hey guys, that is my name. Hello.
And also with us, our also almost as intrepid producer, Chris Higgins.
Hey guys, McClunky.
McClunky, that's right.
Mary McClunky.
And today we have a special guest, a friend of the show that goes way back, that's made some connections for us. I always like to say that this is a very regional podcast because we make Chicago-related jokes, and they're not going to stop today, as you've been listening for the last 5 minutes. But with me, with us, is Ryan Bond from Edge of Orion Theater.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here.
So, Ryan, how did we meet social media-wise? I think... like you happened onto our podcast, or I probably posted somewhere, and then you originally hooked me up with Orion himself, and then devotees of the podcast will recognize that name, Orion Cooling, who is also a very good stage fighter, and we talked to him about stage fighting and Star Wars and all the different projects that he does, and you were the one who hooked us up with him.
Yeah, so I think we connected up probably when I was working on social media and connections for Geek Bar, which was the location and facility here in Chicago that we opened up for a brief while, and was looking to bring a lot of really cool local creators into the community, whether it was podcasts, whether it was sketch comedy, whether it was theater. If it had a geek bent to it, we wanted to bring it in. So, and you guys knew your stuff, so it was great. I always got to hear about that, and I think when you took these interesting angles of like, why aren't droids allowed in Mos Eisley Cantina, right? To do the callback to this episode,
yeah,
right? Like, there's you guys did a really good job delving into that, and I don't think there was a couple of good YouTube explainer guys that are out there, like Generation Tech does a really good job of going real deep into lore and any of that, and you guys just nailed it. And to not find that having to come out of LA or New York was just a boon. So well done.
Those coastal elites.
I know.
The funny part is we went to Geek Bar, Patrick and I, because I think the day before Force Awakens came out, so this was December of 2015, we were trying to go to the Cantina pop-up bar. I can't remember the name of that. What that bar is. The Whistler.
Yeah.
And it was lines out the block. So we went to Geek Bar. And they had some Star Wars themed cocktails, so we sat and had a cocktail on the eve of the dawning of the age of Aquarius. I mean of Disney. So
yes,
yeah, we baptized our insides with the sweet liquor and nectar of Geek Bar before we went to see Force Awakens. So it was a great way to prime ourselves for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then I got connected with Orion kind of through some of the same means, and they were doing stuff right around that time, and they were doing McSith, which was our kind of Jedi Star Wars universe meets Macbeth. So instead of the typical witches of the double toil and trouble, it was the witches of Dathomir that replaced those witches, and it was the turn from blue and green lightsabers down to red lightsabers as Macbeth and the family falls and everything else. And I brought my kids to see that, and just the fact that when you lean into Jedi and Sith, although we never say Jedi and Sith in it, but it was easy to translate a lot of the the conversation of what was going on, right? When there's shorthand for I see who's bad, I see who's good, that's much harder when you're watching Shakespeare and you don't get all of the words. But colored lightsabers help phenomenally quickly to do so.
And I loved that show. I went to see that show. I don't know if you were in attendance or not, but my wife and I saw it, and it was one of the cooler things I've ever seen. So I normally already like Shakespeare, so I'm not going to say you made Shakespeare relevant, but it obviously it ticked off all the nerd things that I needed it to.
Yeah, and I think, and if you haven't had a chance to check it out, and I'll put a plug in at the end as well. But we've continued at Edge Theater to lean heavily into our fandom passion, and we've just launched for a while. Been doing a circuit tour in the film circuits for our fan film called No Easy Target, which features predominantly all actors with exceptionalities, and it is about a bunch of Jedi who we would typically say have Down syndrome, and they are trying to live their self on a planet in isolation, and the Empire finds them. So it's during the era of 456, and the Empire tries to hunt them down. And as they would say, they're no easy target for the Empire. Kind of social commentary on the culture group and how they're perceived and everything else. So we've been winning awards and making a lot of circuits. We were just at the Alamo Draft House last week or the week before for their film conventions, and we kind of keep going around. So it's a place where we kind of continue to go with Star Wars, and it's great.
And not just from the content and the nerdiness, because you and Orion and the whole group go through a lot of different fandoms, not just Star Wars, but all having I don't know if this is the main mission, but like one of the main missions is just to have neurodiversity in your cast. So it's of all types of focuses, and I'm not up on all the terms, but what was the term that you used?
Yep, I mean neurodiversity is a good way to do it. We also, we say people with exceptionalities through that. We also work to make sure that we could get gender diversity as well. So in terms of the neurodiversity, through that, we did a play probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. Instead of Lost Boys, we went with Lost Girls. So we changed all of the vampires instead of being that they were all it was a female coven of vampires. And we play with that a lot. And oftentimes we don't have to typecast a lot of our roles. We just say, who's the best person for this role? And we try to kind of put that person in that role.
Quick question for that one. Did you happen to get a gender swapped muscly saxophone player?
Yeah, off stage. Yeah, that would have been great.
You need a lot of baby oil before you get this person on stage.
Was that Jason Patrick? I can't remember.
It's just that seared into my brain, whoever that muscly saxophone guy is. Anyways, but I love that.
Is that where the joke comes from with the sexy sax guy that like breaks in and plays Careless Whisper?
That's Kenny G.
There's also Sergio on SNL where John Hamm plays some like mysterious sax man that shows up out of the ether. But anyways, a little aside about
it's gone all types of places.
Yeah. But Lost Boys, great Christmas movie.
There you go.
Well, there we go. So I know we're here to talk about The Mandalorian, but I want to put some context on this, especially because of our guest. Because Ryan, you and I had a come to Jesus moment. We met for lunch, and we talked about Star Wars canon, specifically where the films were going. And this is actually something I brought up a couple weeks ago about how you said, I think you believe the words were, if you're following Disney canon from whether the books or the comics or the television shows before this one, that there's no payoff for you when you watch the movies, because you could pay really close attention and there might be something in the background, but like the movies themselves, specifically The Last Jedi, aren't paying it off for you, because they're not rewarding you for paying close attention. And so with that lens, is the Mandalorian paying anything to you, or where are we at so far 5 chapters in?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? And I was saying in this place where, the movies get to do what they want to do, right? We've only been typically 2 major franchise ones and 2 spin-offs at this point to kind of go ahead and do that. And I think Disney lets the directors tell whatever story they want, and then Pablo Hidalgo and the story group have to kind of figure out where it fits after the fact. And I think since Mandalorian is now sitting in the TV universe, they are being run by Dave Filoni, who has done Rebels and Resistance and Clone Wars. And I think he has a strong eye towards continuity and connection. And I think a different type of fan service than people might say, but he actually like legitimate good fan service in the sense of he is a fan himself and therefore wants to see these things get answered, play out, see where those stories go. So The Mandalorian, 5 episodes in, there is something for everyone who is dipped into the books, who's dipped into the TV shows, that there's something that's inside there. And it's not, I don't feel like it's as, I mean, Marvel does a pretty good job of that as well with the Easter eggs, but the Easter eggs are things here that are belonging in the world. And, this episode leans heavily on a lot of that with a revisit to Mos Eisley and all the kind of homages that it plays. But every episode has had a lot of those things. So I think that has been what's really been rewarding in this experience. And my kids who watch along with us, we watch all together, are catching up on catching those references as well, which is great.
So we actually touched on this briefly on our last episode, and I don't want us to get too far into the weeds with this, but it's an inherently weedy subject. So it's kind of a tricky balance of figuring out the right balance of fan service. When is fan service like done well, and when can it be appreciated, and when is it seen as pandery and like a forced, like exaggerated plot device or something or whatever? Like you see certain things where, like Solo, for example, where they have to bring up his name, like stuff like that, or different things that just seem like shoehorned in. So it's I guess the question that we were trying to discuss is how does it become something that's like easily integrated into a story where the fans can appreciate it and it's not seen as something that ostracizes newer viewers? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first episode does a thing where when he gets the Imperial Beskar blocks and brings them to the Mandalorian armor smith, most people don't know what Beskar is. They haven't heard this stuff. They don't really know what's going on. When you see Dr. Pershing and he's got a logo on his jacket that is a logo from the cloning facilities on Camino, like these are deep cuts, and they don't shine a spotlight on them, at least at this moment, to be a big deal. If you don't know what Beskar is, if you don't know where Camino is, if you didn't watch the prequels, you're going to just kind of skate on by and miss some of that. And I think that's color texture, that's flavor, and I think that's when a fan is making your film, that's what you see. When you see fan service, that's when you see Ron Howard and the crew making Solo going, okay, we got to hit the Kessel Run. We got to hit Chewie how he gets free. We got to hit all these beats. And sometimes things that don't need to be said that are left to the imagination to this episode, for the reasons why Boba Fett was so notoriously awesome and mysterious for many people was the fact of how little he said. And there was so much reference to other catchphrases or places where he went that the larger universe had to fill it in. So I think that's where it kind of leans in for me.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I was watching Empire just a couple of days ago, and that scene with no disintegrations to Boba, and then they edited in the I forgot the actor's name, but saying affirmative to him after he says no disintegrations, and it makes him at least 30% less cool by saying affirmative, Yeah. Like just having that mystique of him being this silent guy with a cool outfit, that's all you need, But totally agreed. So speaking of fan service, and in my view, some of my favorite exposition type things are show and don't tell. We're going back to Tatooine, my friends. And not only are we going back to Tatooine, we're going to literally this same street and same docking bay and same bar and same seat as episode 4. However, one of the points that I've seen brought up on the internet is nobody seems to know or care, which is kind of the nice part, because the people in Star Wars, to quote How I Met Your Mother, they're living the Star Wars. They haven't seen the Star Wars because they're living them. And so it's kind of nice to see, you see this new character, the gunslinger, I guess that's what they're probably referring to. This new character is sitting in Han Solo's seat. And
it's not like it's some hallowed ground where like, oh, some things probably happened here. It's just he plops on down because you're at a bar. So that's one thing I really enjoyed about this was everything was very visual and didn't make a big point of, guys, this is Tatooine, like from the first movie and all the other movies in it too.
Yeah, they didn't linger excessively on anything.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I would say with The Mandalorian so far, something that I really like is they don't feel a need to have to, I think I said it earlier, like spotlight certain things, but like, guys, this is why this is cool. It's the whole, leading a little too into it's like poetry, it rhymes things that happen in the prequels where it's like, we get it. It's like imagery of Vader before he turned, whatever, or after he turned. This time it's like they'll show a nod to what you were saying, Ryan, and let the fans that would pick it up be like, you can have that. That was for you. We're not going to linger on it, and we're not going to have some person call it. I'm like, hey, isn't that the booth where that Solo guy was sitting? They just move on and they say the people who will get it. The people who don't probably wouldn't really care that much anyways.
No.
So,
well, and you see that when the Mando walks into, just before he goes into the cantina, the stormtrooper helmets that are sitting there, and the camera does not actually linger too long. I think it's maybe a total of 3 shots that show these things, but it sets that tone that says, this isn't the Empire, right? The Empire has fallen. People are walking by. They're out and out, discarding and affronting the Empire. And that says, okay, the show don't tell mechanism of we're just going to keep moving, right? People now have gotten used to these helmets on spikes, and it's now a way of life for them. And the camera's not excessively, gratuitously lingering on it to kind of keep showing that. Nor does someone say, like, man, when are we going to get those helmets that have been up there for 5 years down? It's been a long time.
Yeah.
So does this definitively answer our question about why droids aren't allowed in the cantina? Because of fear of recording for the Empire? Because if there's no Empire, then that would explain why a droid is a bartender now.
Yeah.
Or the times that have fallen, right? When you go into the cantina, it's like 30% the patronage. So
yeah, true.
You did it side by side.
Droids are cheaper, I guess. Yeah, because one of our theories was they take up space for paying customers. They don't drink themselves. I think droid racism was another thing. But then our main point was everyone thought that they were being recorded. And in this case, the New Republic is not a very heavy-handed government at this point. So I don't know if anyone ever really feared that at this. Or again, it might not be answering any specific question.
Well, I think it does in the sense that in Force Awakens you have C-3PO who has his robot droid listening network. So he does have the ones that are in Tokadana that are the ones that are picking up on what's going on, and that's how the Resistance gets as many bits of news is through C-3PO's spy network. So to say that one theory checked off, like C-3PO did go and do that.
Which may or may not matter to criminals as much, because it seemed like bigger things were starting to go on in the universe as opposed to trying to regulate the Bounty Hunters Guild. But maybe
I think we made this joke back in that initial episode, but it's like in the 90s, the whole conspiracy about people bringing their Furbies into political offices to record. So we both have we've lived our own Star Wars, except ours were all Furbies, were our droids.
Well, now they just are in our pocket with our series and Cortanas and whatnot, so they're there.
Yeah, they don't blink at us and tell us they love us. I wish they would.
Not yet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a couple of steps back. The very opening scene is a space fight, our first one. So what do we think of this space fight, fellas?
It's very well done.
I was really excited when the show started. I saw that space fight. But
it's hard to say.
It didn't take too long, but
what shots are doing damage and what shots are glancing? Because it just seems like there's a lot of direct hits to that engine, and it just keeps on trucking.
Probably one of those boss fight situations in video games where you can hit all these parts of a creature, but if you just hit the one very minimal area, then that's what'll actually cause it to start blowing up. Like Star Fox,
See a lot of action from the alluvial dampeners, which makes it seem like there's gravity in space. So when he pulls back on both of those, joysticks or whatever, he really jars it just like he slammed on the brakes.
Yeah, I think it was great. I was trying to figure out if that was like a Z-95 Headhunter that was a ship that was pursuing, was it the Raptor? I think is the name of his ship or something like that.
Razor Crest.
Razor Crest, there you go. But for as awesome as Mando tends to be in a lot of places, he's also not as polished as he should be. Yep. And the firefight here definitely demonstrated, like, how did someone get behind him? Why is he getting a pummeling pretty bad for quite a bit on this one? And yeah, he gets to flip it into reverse and take the advantage. But it seemed pretty much like, why don't you know what you're going, and how many switches can you flip before you figure this thing out?
Yeah, that fight looks how I feel playing Jedi Fallen Order, because when I play it, I want to look good. I want to make it look like I'm a Jedi fighting stormtroopers, and I just get whacked usually. And you have a lot of hit points in that game, but like I just wanted to make it look good, and I can never have a good fight in that game.
So Nick, this kind of ties into that. I think it was the second episode where I brought up that I was a little thrown off because I was expecting my boy Mandy to be a John Wick of space, to just be able to walk around, take on any groups of people without barely any effort. And just be the badass that we expect all Mandalorians to be. And he has his moments for sure, but there's a lot of moments where we see him, and to your point, Ryan, it's a little bit rough around the edges. It's a little bit, sloppy. And I think the realization here is I went into this thinking it was just going to be a one-season experiment. And I think this is really, we're seeing this become something they want to develop over a couple of seasons at least, so that at the end of maybe 3 seasons, he has an arc where he's like the true badass of space, whatever. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's not wearing his helmet at that point or something. He renounces his Mandalorian faith and he's walking around taking names that way. But when I revisit the series and keep that consideration in mind as I'm watching it, it allows me to be a little bit more understanding of the messiness that we see from him all the time, as long as there's part of a journey here.
Yeah. Yeah, so. I think if we can unpack some of that, I often find multiple times in an episode where I'm wondering, like, what are you doing? This is just like I think it's the first episode where he storms back in to get the asset, and it's like, are you not slinking in? Are you not paying? He's just like, I'm gonna go in as a one rag wrecking crew, and he like gets cornered because he feels like he's better ass himself than he actually is, and gets himself continuously caught in this problem. Like this episode has numerous one of those. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but there's a couple of those points where you're like, what are you doing?
guys, another conspiracy theory here. Maybe we'll see how the season turns out. So what we're all expecting right now, right, is that Mandy is an orphan of a Mandalorian village that was besieged by war and has kind of been on his own doing whatever to raise himself somewhat. Is that kind of what we're thinking so far?
Yeah, we've seen the droid army, and probably why he keeps saying, I don't want any droids anywhere near me. So at least that's a thread that seems to be going.
So what if in a twist at the end of the season we find out that the Mandalorian is actually one of the mercenaries that was attacking that village of children, and he killed that kid's parents and just took their armor and put that on and became like a Mandalorian? He's some random merc, and that's why he's not that great. I don't think Disney would do that. I'm just saying, I'm doing a little bit of a Christopher Nolan here. Just going with that bit.
Yeah, I don't know if it resonates quite for me on that particular point. I mean, there's going to be probably a couple of zigs and zags through some of this, and I think we haven't, of course, gotten to the end of this episode in particular. But we've got a lot of sheep in wolf's clothing that may be kind of floating out there, and maybe he isn't actually Mandalorian, and therefore maybe was not trained well or got to be older, and his training was stunted in some particular way. Through some of that.
Yeah, I think it was more of a twist for twist's sake, that theory there. But I think it's definitely more in line with what you're saying, which is we're seeing the Mandalorians that are remaining, and they definitely seem like they're in hiding from some sort of force right now. We don't know exactly what the situation is or what's caused them to go underground, but all they've got left is their armor and their wits, and they're trying to figure it out, in the meantime, and their jetpacks.
Yeah, and their jetpacks. Yeah. And maybe they maybe Mando is good, but he's maybe not even as good as some of the other guys that are down there that are, and it takes a little bit of time to go out and get good, right? He's a level 7 assassin right now.
Yeah.
I also think part of it is the type of ship classes that were fighting each other. I think one of them is more of a, I don't know, like I think he's using kind of a transport ship, right? Like he's got cargo. In the Mando, that is, he's got a lot of cargo. The other guy is kind of he's kind of like an ace pilot in like a small fighter ship. I
believe Boba Fett's Slave One ship is a repurposed police ship. So it's kind of a thing of them to take ships from other industries and reorient them to whatever they need to use them for.
Right.
The Pied Piper of Star Wars Twitter is in our chat. Hey, Micah, you just blew Micah's mind with that whole, hey, maybe the Mando started the Mando.
Yeah, I was taking like a Mad Men Don Draper type thing, Dick Whitman.
Yeah, that was a very Watchmen theory too. No spoilers. So yeah. So before we leave Nostalgia Land, one last thing about Tatooine, R5D4's there. That's been confirmed. It's not just a red R2 unit, it's R5D4.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So one of those things you could miss, really, unless you really, were on Wikipedia enough.
Yeah, there's a lot of great, extended Legends canon stuff now around that droid and whatnot. So,
yeah. Amy Sedaris is now canon.
with a perm.
Yeah, I love the stuff that she lets makeup artists do to her. Between all of her years of not looking like Amy Sedaris, because she's actually a very pretty person in real life and just a beautiful soul, but she's just played some real crazy looking people, especially in Strangers with Candy.
Oh yeah.
Well, she's doing a good Ellen Ripley impression.
Yeah.
That's the vibe of like her schlumpy sister.
Yeah, Eileen Ripley.
Yeah, and is this the first time we've seen the repair droids in a non-prequel live-action Star Wars movie?
So. In a movie, yeah. They've been you've seen them in the animated series, though. I think they show up in Resistance. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So live action wise, this is the first time we've seen them since I think Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a little bit. Yeah.
They're a good amount in Jedi Fallen Order. They're just around in different places. They're not like a part of the plot.
Coming back with a resurgence.
Yeah. So Amy Sedaris is her name is Peli Motto. We don't know much about her because this is the only canon reference to her. So somehow she is a docking bay attendant. Whether I don't understand. Like, do you think this is some kind of private like when you go to a Cubs game, it's just somebody's front yard that you go park in, or is there some kind of or is it more like a downtown parking lot where it's a big company and then she just happens to be the attendant in this one lot?
Yeah, I think it's Mos Eisley's spot hero.
Yep. Okay. So she happens to rent out part of her property that makes a perfect circle, and she's like, "Oh, you can land here." And then I have my pit droids from, we don't pod race anymore, so might as well make a couple of bucks. So maybe she was a pod race mechanic.
Yeah, in her youth, right? That would have been, whatever, 35 years ago. I'd have to figure out the math. 40 some odd years ago.
Yeah.
56 years ago.
Nice. Her hair got too close to too many pod racing turbines and permanently frizzed it.
I keep forgetting.
Yeah,
this is only 5 years after Return of the Jedi, but I'm thinking prequels are way longer before that. So yeah, she'd have to be a real youngster.
But the pod races may have only stopped once the Hutts stopped taking control of Tatooine, right?
That's
so
true.
Once the Hutts fell, then the pod races they were the only ones that were interested.
Which was only about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Basically when Jabba was plunged into the depths of sand. Yeah. So we got a couple of more references, like fan references that talk about carbon scoring. Seen some action there. And then when they talk about feeding Baby Yoda, she tells her pit droids to find something with bones in it, which I
think that's a simpler one, just in the sense that the droids are dumb and she needs protein, right? The marrow from the bones.
Oh, true.
Right, rather than something liquidy, like he seems. But that was just not how I looked at it.
Yeah, because I don't think those pit droids are entirely very intelligent.
No. So she must not be there must be not a lot of traffic going around Mos Eisley. If not only does she have premier parking, she's got some mediocre droids, and she's willing to let any ship dock in her bay. Down on their luck cantina area.
Yeah, I got the 125 day game, so $25 in and out, no ins and outs.
Well, I think it goes to show too the whole vacuum of the Empire being gone. Even though long term that's probably a good thing for people, short term it'll cripple a lot of industry and the only thing that will really succeed in a government-free place is crime. So any legit business you're trying to run, unless it's has some shady underbellies to it, it's not going to be doing so hot.
Well, and even with a lack of stability just across the galaxy, right? With the New Republic just coming to order, even the crime syndicates are hurt, right? If there's no one having a lot of mass industry and money to spend the way that the Empire was, there's no one to really steal from. There's no centralization of any of that. And as Mon Mothma and Senator Organa were doing, they were decentralizing a lot of what was happening, and therefore, at this point, they were still running down the remnants of the Empire. On this end, right? In the Battle of Jakku, I'd have to double check if it's just happened or about to happen somewhere in this timeline.
So moving a little bit, we've kind of been flopping back and forth here, but he gets to the bar, has a pretty humorous conversation with the bartender, but that is interrupted by Toro Calican, the most Hayden Christensen looking person who isn't Hayden Christensen.
He had a very 90s teen heartthrob vibe going on. Kind of like nodes of Freddie Prinze Jr., if you will.
Yeah,
Freddie boy band vibes.
Freddie Prinze the Third, yeah.
He's also a Star Wars. He's a Star Wars voice actor, so it works out.
And that does work out. The Star Wars Minute people make a good reference. He seems like a Disney Channel star of some sort, and kind of lends himself to that, which I actually kind of lends itself to this character of a wannabe bounty hunter in a way, because it almost seems like a fish out of water. Like, what are you doing here, kid? This is supposed to be a gritty space western. It's like,
the vibe here is those chewed up child actors who start going a little wacky after they've gotten out of the Disney machine. So
they should have had Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf, if you will, who was really trying to make a name for themselves.
I saw Honey Boy on Friday. Oh boy,
it's good.
I don't. It's hard to say good on that movie. It's
good's not the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
So Toro Calican is looking for Fennec Shand, which I feel like at this point these are being put through a Star Wars name generator, because some of them, like Toro Calican sounds kind of like a lawnmower a little bit. Fennec Shand is kind of like a Fox branded kind of beer that is mixed with lemonade. But you got to think of new names somehow. But we're going after a very, very dangerous mercenary named Fennec Shand. And hilarity ensues.
Yeah, I mean, this is that moving forward, right? This character was one that was definitely teased in a lot of the media coming up to this through any of that. So it was a good kind of connection. And for fans of I guess both Stargate, Atlantis, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it was a quick recognition of a character's face.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised too at this one. It felt the most, and you guys can call me out on this, but it felt the most Dave Filoni of the episodes so far to me, because he
directed it.
Yeah, that's. I mean, when I saw that at the end, I was like, Dave, you left your mark. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I think he is very inspired by a lot of the I don't want to say like bottle episodes of cartoons, but that nature of just a very simple plot of just A to B to C and then done. And there's not necessarily supposed to be any real reverberations as a consequence of the episode or anything like that. It's just something where you can get a sliver of maybe an understanding of a character by the end of it, and that's it. Again, to bring me to what we've talked about earlier, I do worry about the through line of the season and what exactly we're building towards, because we have these moments that really seem to build something or bring us back to what's going on with the Empire's interest in Yodito and what he's doing with the baby and whatnot, whatever. And then we'll have moments like this that are like still kind of cool imagery, Star Wars purified, enjoying that for its time. And then at the end, it's just kind of like, and now he's on to Space Albuquerque or wherever his next place is, So.
I think if you had replaced Tatooine with any other planet, I think this episode would have underperformed, right?
Yeah.
And as I told Nick, I was like, oh, all right, this episode was fine. It doesn't do a lot. And if we replaced it with, Fram, the desert planet, and we didn't have a reason to lean in and see what is Mos Eisley looking like. Where is Mos Espa? What has the Hutt Empire fallen look like? If it was just even like the previous place where we were on desert world with Empire remnants, this at least had a reason to pay attention, but there wasn't a lot of reason in here, right? Mando doesn't show a lot of great growth. The other characters don't show a lot of great growth. Yodito doesn't move forward much as a character, right? Like, not much really happens, and at the end, most people look less effective than before.
And I have to say, I know the show, and I don't mean this in any sort of diminutive way, but it's simple in a lot of like really great ways. But when he walks out of his ship and he leaves Yodito there and just like wanders off, and then next thing you know, just like the movie Baby's Day Out, Yodito starts stumbling out, and you're like, what did you think was going to happen, Mandy? Every episode. And so at a certain point, it's like, when's the Tom and Jerry shtick going to end where Mandy's like, let me just go get a beer real quick, and then Yodito starts his adventures for the day. As much as I love Yodito and all of his fun little adventures, we got to find some new ways to vary it up. Maybe have Bill Burr in the next episode take Yodito out for an ice cream or something. I don't know.
It's like the Steve Guttenberg or the Dave Coulier of parenting. Yeah, it's just like, what are you? I'm like, we're 5 episodes in. I understand you may not have been a parent, but like 3 episodes of consistently leaving, like, I don't know what to do with this kid. I'll just leave him in my ship. Like, what? They're gonna wake up.
your job is to capture people and hold them in like in containment for long periods of time. Like, and this is what you do.
This isn't an infant Yoda, too. I think it's kind of hard because the Yoda species is so diminutive, and he's also 50 years old. But like, this is toddler stage. Like, I'm not a parent myself, but Ryan, as you can attest, like, there's a point where your baby is just a blob, and you can leave it there and like kind of go do, like, obviously not leave your child unattended, but you can go to the sink and, go to the fridge and come back and your baby's still there. But then they get to a certain point where if you do that, they've pulled all the stuff off the wall and opened up shelves and stuff like that. I think Yodito is at that point. He is a toddler, not an infant. He can clearly get out of that bassinet.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if it was like, parents have things like webcams that they watch their kids on, or monitors or whatnot. You've just parked your ship in a strange place. Both you and Yodito are hunted and wanted targets, and you just stroll out to think you're going to go to the bar and it's going to be okay. You don't have a motion sensor on your back door is open. Like, what? Like, you're parking your ship. Like, same thing, the Jawas, right? Like, he parked his ship and the Jawas have at it. Where's the trigger motion alarm, right? Like, armor's coming off your ship. Why are you not being alerted? So it feels like, for as futuristic as the technology is, they're missing simple Amazon level of shaking alarms, or just like anything to help with the babyingness.
The galaxy needs LoJack real bad.
Yeah, I gotta say, Mandy's turning into a little bit of a scumbag, because every episode is like, hey man, I don't have any money for gas. Can you help me out?
He's Frank Gallagher.
Oh no, where's my kid? Oh no! Like, every episode.
Oh, yeah. I mean, why don't we just put him, put little Yodito in some carbonite, man? He's not going anywhere.
I am starting to become shameless, where every episode is how Frank is making money today.
Get a little bit more Beskar steel, make a Yodito papoose out of the Beskar, and then just walk around with him toted right on your chest piece.
Yeah, I mean, having him on his chest doesn't make him any less a target than him walking around in the Beskar armor. So may as well just walk around with it.
Yeah.
Have you heard? I don't know if you've listened to our previous episodes, but we've been calling the Armory the Poke Center. It's a place where you go visit every once in a while. But he shows up at because even the things he brings in kind of hop, up and down. And so he goes to the Poke Center. Is like, just sits. I need a Bjorn. This is the way. And so, like, next to we see is a Beskar Bjorn.
Yeah.
Every time the hammer clinks against the metal, you see like Yodito like blowing spit bubbles or soiling itself.
Yeah, this episode actually used a lot of what typical baby sounds for Yodito, and a lot of that, more so than the other ones. Yeah, it felt definitely way more babyish. In this one, but. So he picks up the puck, and the guy he decides to go off on it, right? And this is the thing where you start to see how good or bad Mandy is, and where it's at. And he seems to, be right somewhere in the middle. And he does still seem to have some of the code and it's kind of hard for a lot of people to understand this weird Star Wars universe of the code, or just this idea of like crossing and double crossing, even from good guys and bad guys and people who hated each other hanging out with each other. Like it just is a different universe with kind of different laws than our culture is. But he's got a code that he's willing to kind of help this guy out to get some money too.
So, and this is the tricky thing for me, is that, the plot of this episode is pretty simple in the sense that he joins up with our boy band friend, and they go off a little journey to find Shandy, and they find her.
So they find the summer Shandy.
They go out to get their Shandy, and one thing leads to another. They apprehend her, and she turns on boy band. Boy band then kills her, which is the one twist that I was like, okay, it's nice little turn here. And then
she decides to become his agent, right? Like, hey, I got this, right? You got false representation, right? Yeah. Let's get away off the Sony label. Let's get a different label for you.
Yeah. Listen, Backstreet Boys, your current representation is not helping you out. Boy band things will be over in 5 years. You got to go solo. All right. Look at what Justin Timberlake did. It's going to do wonders for you. Anyways, sorry, I'm going too far down this hole. But so that's what's happened. That was great. And then the rest of the episode kind of played out as you would expect, according to the tropes of the Western genre and samurai genre, things like that. And the thing that's a little tricky for me, I think, at this point is that I'm still enjoying these episodes, but sometimes it's so beat for beat what you would kind of expect from the given nuances of any like genre that it's paying homage to, that you start being able to call out what's going to happen, where it's, Mandalorian's going to trust this guy, and then this guy's going to betray him, and then he's going to have to show that he can't, allow that, and he's going to put him down and show his dark side, and that'll be the end of the episode. And as satisfying as those beats are, at a certain point, maybe the reason I'm coming up with these twists is I want there to be something that kind of turns these things on its head and lets you start having this room to believe that maybe things won't play out the way that you necessarily expect them to each episode.
Yeah, I mean, he like walks right back into the hangar bay, and like hours later, right? Hours and hours later on the dewback, and just kind of wanders in and is all like, "What's up?" Right? Like we all expected there to be some level of ambush inside there. So why come in through the front door?
Also, Mandy, you literally just had the entire Bounty Hunters Guild turn on you, and your good friend Mando, going to try and kill you. A couple of episodes later, you'd think he'd be looking over your shoulder a little bit more, dude.
Yeah,
but I don't know. He's got a heart of gold, a dumb heart of gold, and Beskar.
Yeah, I mean, he needs the money, but I think you're right. Right, the twist in shooting. This was, well-named character, well-teased character was a bit of a surprise. Whether she's dead or not, who knows? Through some of that, she could potentially always come back at Star Wars. Through some of that, but I think this charge, we're going to take the speeder bikes and we're going to charge at her. I mean, it was cool, right? Like we got to see these speeder bikes, and that was pretty neat. We're going to fire off some flares and all of that, and he gets shot down, but somehow, Backstreet Boy gets around her in 7 seconds to kind of sneak up behind her. I didn't know how that happened. Mando goes down, and next thing you know, he's gotten up a mountain, snuck behind her, isn't even winded, and it's all drop it.
His whole thing is it's how I get through scenes in Jedi Fallen Order. I just by accident, I fire a couple things in the air, and all of a sudden I've gotten to the next waypoint.
Have you found that game as punishing as I have?
I love it, first of all, but I have a tough time looking good while playing it.
Yeah, it's no Force Unleashed.
I'm not finessing my way through that game. Let's just say
ragdoll the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that our boy band friend's whole reason for becoming a bounty hunter is he's really quick on his feet, and he's really good at sneaking out on people. But then when the time comes for him to actually have to do something of value, he's not able to perform well, except for shooting a handcuffed person in the chest. But
yeah, I mean, he seems like a very young Han Solo type character, right? Someone who uses a lot more talk to get themselves into situations, or a James Bond type of, bounty hunter. They're not going to, if he had, wherever he goes, but kind of would have gone into being less guns blaring and more I'm going to get myself into a situation on Canto Bight, right? He could have gotten himself into a place, found a high profile target, and been okay, do you want to pay me off, or am I going to take you and shoot you in the bathroom? Because Mando would not be strolling into Canto without any level of, subtlety through any of that. So I see them potentially being interestingly different class of bounty hunters.
He's definitely the Mr. Pibb Han Solo.
Dr. Bubble. Yeah.
Fawn Folo. So missed opportunity to use swoop bikes here. I mean, if we're going fans, if we're going deep into the lore here, could have used swoop bikes, cowards, but they used speeder bikes. And then one thing I've noticed with this whole journey, like this takes place over several days. Mandalorian, or maybe even people in general in the Star Wars galaxy, have a much higher tolerance for the passage of time than I do, or maybe the normal human being does. Like, people in the Star Wars universe have no problem doing things that last 2 days where they don't go inside.
Yeah.
In a desert.
Yeah.
Because they go out during the day, they find her and notice she has the high ground. They wait till night. Who knows how long that was? They attack her at night, and then they hold her captive over that night while Mando goes back on his dewback, comes back during the day, again comes back into Mos Eisley at night. Like, I would have probably been driven mad by this point.
Well, Mandy might have some space Netflix he can queue open inside his helmet.
Hopefully, at least has some like space Monster Energy drink, or some space RX bars,
Yeah.
There is not a lot of entertainment that often persists in both the Star Wars expanded universe and all of this. They don't watch a lot. They don't read a lot. It's just not a place where there is that a lot as a whole. I'm really curious where that is. And some of that was even in like Last Jedi, when there was speculation around like paper books that Luke had versus like the HoloNet and entertainment. Like, people just seem to like doing stuff face to face and find space travel being very zen. Man, I'd be binging podcasts left and right, man. I can't imagine how many planets you got binging out great podcasts. Like,
so isn't there that one card game? Is it Pizak? Is that what?
Yeah, you're talking from like the games. You're talking like Old Republic.
Yeah, that would have been nice to see them maybe like throw down some cards on the sand and play some.
Well, they were playing Sabacc. That was little Amy Sedaris' character was playing that with the droids.
Yeah.
Oh, so they gotta have some intelligence. Jeez. Or they have a Sabacc app that she downloaded from the Amazon Alexa Pit Droid app store. So, justice for Sand People. So we've seen the Sand People. Or wait, I'm sorry. What's the wrong way to call it? What's the pejorative way? I can't remember. It's Sand People or Tusken Raiders is the wrong way.
I believe Tusken Raiders.
They call them Tusken Raiders in this episode.
Tusken Raiders, because Sand People is like what that's not the good. So we've seen them get abused in all of Star Wars. They seem like these mindless beasts that come and just kind of mess up your day. But then we see our space Boba Fett, or our new Boba Fett, gives them some respect, and treats them like people.
Maybe he learned after trying to incinerate the Jawas when they were trying to negotiate with him that he was like, I want to turn it down a little bit this time.
Kills and maims with no mercy, but Tusken Raiders, Tusken Raiders is the preferred nomenclature, dude. Tusken Raiders, no, we talk to them and we communicate with them. Like, I've never seen anybody try to communicate with a Tusken Raider.
I mean, I think they're low armed. For whatever reason, Mandy does not have his disintegration gun with him. I forgot if he lost it somewhere or left it on a ship.
Another thing he left on a ship.
Yeah, he left it on the ship.
Yodito's probably like flossing his teeth with it on the ship or something.
There we go. Right? Why now? And so, I assume that they were unarmed and didn't have quite a lot to take on. That they're really worried about the Tusken Raiders coming on them. But it felt like that scene, if anything, felt too much of a fan servicey thing. Like, there was why you could have cut that whole scene and nothing would have changed.
Yeah, and I feel like the episode would have been a lot more interesting if the Tusken Raiders had continued to be a part of. Maybe they joined them for the bounty hunt or something, right? Then we could have seen some more dynamics to the Tusken Raiders. Like, from the moment that I saw, I didn't know that they, communicated through sign language essentially, right? And seeing that added a lot of nuance to these characters that are only ever shown as, screeching, murderers. Yeah. So
It has a much more elegant way of doing it than Han Solo did in Solo, where he attempts to grunt at Chewie. So I'm sure you could probably sign language to a Wookiee the same way, because you're not trying to like debase yourself by going,
Also, I believe they would have been pretty instrumental with old Shandy, because they're long range hunters, right? They have the little rifles they take with them. So I don't know.
With with these episodes that are like 39 to 42 minutes or 4 long, like every moment that we see is really important. Yeah. And this just felt, this feels like a scene where, yes, you see Mandy as a more intelligent character moving some stuff forward, but I want in a 60, it felt like it belongs in a 60-minute episode, not a 39-minute episode where 5 minutes of this is dedicated to bartering in Agrabah.
It was definitely a random aside of like, by the way, guys, remember these from Tatooine as well? Moving on.
So, I would have loved a scene if they stepped in to help at some point, and then he turns to the camera, man, I'm glad I called that guy. Alas, they didn't. So we get...
Hey, Adam Sand personler.
Oh.
Alex in here, so I have to do that kind of
joke. You did it so much better, though. Don't tell him I said that.
Okay.
All right, so we have the back and forth. We have I'm going to be your new agent now. No, just kidding. I just needed that information. I don't really need you anymore because this is the bigger haul. And then turn that back around. You don't do that to the Mandy. You just don't do that to Mandy. When he wants to be responsible, he is responsible. But fast forward, we see a mysterious person in boots and a cape walking up to Fennec's remains.
In spurs.
Like the real Western that it is. Who could it be?
That's going to be Gus Fring.
Gus. Oh, okay, yes.
No. That's possible. I'm going to go with as I've watched a variety of videos to see how educated people are on the larger Star Wars universe. My guess is it's Cobb Vanth, is my guess.
Ooh, I like the name.
Not Boba Fett, as people are speculating who these booted feats are.
Everyone's taking the easy route and saying Boba Fett.
Because it's easy, right? Not everyone read those not so great Aftermath trilogy books that happen around this point.
Yeah, because that sets the tone. It's very, very side story of somebody who gets Boba Fett's armor.
Gets Mandalorian armor, right? So, but we assume that this is a character that is in the Aftermath books, and the way the Aftermath books were written, there is like an A storyline and a B storyline, and in front of a couple of the chapters, they had a bunch of interludes to see what happened with other characters. You got to see what happened to, Lando. You got to see what happened to Jar Jar Binks. You got to see what happened with a lone gunman on Tatooine named Cobb Vanth, who finds a set of old armor ejected somewhere near a Sarlacc pit and decides to put it on and decides to call himself the Sheriff.
And this is on Tatooine. So
this is on Tatooine.
Go, Cobb Vanth. This would be one of those payoffs that you're looking for, Ryan.
That would be great.
Exactly. And this is when those boots walked into frame. I was squeed. I was happy. And, and my wife and my kids are like, what? I'm like, oh, it's the guy from the books.
Yeah, I mean, because we see a lot of what's happening with the TV aspects of Star Wars post-Disney takeover have been a lot more, reverent of the previous material in the Legacy canon, or Legends canon, rather. They brought back
Admiral Thrawn.
Admiral Thrawn. I almost said Admiral Zahn.
Yeah. No. Timothy Zahn.
You wouldn't be wrong.
Yeah. Things like that where they clearly can note that there's important characters and really cool ideas that are worth bringing back in smart ways. And to our earlier nod to how Marvel's handled things with the Marvel Studios films is they've been able to weave a lot of major beats from comics and maybe updated them or tweaked them in a way that makes sense for the story. while also holding onto the core of some of those ideas, whether it be how they handled Winter Soldier or Civil War or things like that. This would be another great opportunity for them to update fans on what's going on with Boba Fett now, whether he's alive or not, or if they say, this guy shows up and he says, I found this armor, but there's nobody in it, or whatever.
And I think, this is a Dave Filoni production, at least, very heavily inside, not just this episode, but the season and the show and so forth. And he is a guy who worked closely with the story group, because through Clone Wars and through Rebels, he was building the de facto canon that was happening for many, many years, as the protege of Lucas. So he has a very positive interaction with them, right? And if you want to talk about anyone that's, given us the most Mandalorian content inside, the Clone Wars series and inside the Rebel series, it's the Dave Filoni team that's actually there. So when he's in meetings with the story group, I have to imagine that he's like, all right, guys, what is, I haven't been reading every single book and comic and whatnot's going on. What do I got? Give me stuff to work with. And they're all like, okay, there's this Cobb Vanth, and he was introduced by Chuck Wendig, and he's like, cool, right? And whether this pans out or not, but at least for the moment, I can feel a soft touch that there was at least a reference. I really don't want it to be Boba Fett.
No.
The armor is perfectly fine. Yeah. I think that even the interlude in the book that there's this guy who found this armor and is going to be like, I'm going to use this to do good. I actually thought that Cobb Vanth was going to be the guy who the show was about when I saw the early kind of teaser, because this was just this little hidden nugget of a character that got a drop in the book, and I thought was going to get this callback. So I was waiting for it, and here it came out and happened.
So Patrick, let's say in the next 3 episodes, it is Boba Fett. What does Boba Fett say to the Mandalorian?
Nice disintegration.
Yeah, he says something like, you got any space Fosters? I've been in a big butthole for too long now.
Looks like you found a baby.
Yeah, I was a little thinking back into it, but maybe being in the space butthole really, warped his yeah.
But who'd you knock up to get that little green whelp?
Oh, that's a good Aussie.
I got one of those Hemsworth brothers wearing my costume there. What's going on with that? But
I don't know if Boba would add anything to this. I mean, it would really. I think it would. I mean, so fine. He if Mando faces off with the man and Boba Fett and kills him, okay, fine. I mean, or he loses, fine. So, I don't know what there is to really be gained. Like, that is the biggest lampshading spotlight on a homage to a character that most people really, if they really search their soul, was not effective.
Well, and it's to your point, Ryan. I wanted to ask, if we did bring Boba back, or if Boba still exists post Sarlacc pit, in the new canon, what kind of presence do we want him to have? And my initial thought is the right way to handle it would be kind of how they handled Darth Maul, where they made him this background presence that slowly built up into this vengeful character, or this transformed character that shows up completely different to as you saw him before. Another thought I was just having is, what if you kind of almost retconned it so that all these ideas of Boba Fett were just different people wearing the armor? And for a very long time, this complete buffoon that could never get a shot off and was getting kicked over all the time was some random dude that was wearing the armor for a while,
I've heard that theory as well, right? Is the Boba Fett that we know of Jango Fett's son, was he actually murdered a long time ago? Yeah. And did someone else take that armor and is running around, which is why he's as ineffective as he is to get Skywalker?
Yeah. Right. Boba Fett's more of a state of mind, yeah?
More of a way to be, really. You just kick back a few blue milks and you go out there and you start shooting. And next thing you know, you're in sand butthole. And
when you say ho, you just Cockney.
Yeah, it's more fun to say it that way. Butthole. I need to ask my Australian friends how to say butthole. The question though that I'm curious about from all you guys is, if Boba Fett does return, or if Boba Fett continues to exist in the Star Wars canon, how do we want him to continue to exist in a way that's not just hey guys, remember him? the cool guy. Come out, cool guy. Show up again because you look cool.
Yeah.
Oof.
It's a toughie, but
it's a toughie because if I look at some of the comics and some of the books that are filling in a little bit of this era, it's a complicated early era, and there's a lot that could go on through some of that. But like, do I want to see him running after Han Solo? Probably not. Or Luke Skywalker? Like, I don't know. It's been done. I think it's time for some new people to kind of step into the spotlight and or through any of that. I mean, there's characters in the universe. Talon Karrde, who was crime lord that took over after Jabba the Hutt, was an interesting character through some of that. He was far more interesting to me than Boba Fett ever was through some of that. But I don't know. Nick, what's your thoughts?
Well, I hope when Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy say less is more, I hope they mean it, because I wouldn't mind if Boba Fett was just locked. He is what he is. He didn't have a really great ending to Return of the Jedi, but we don't need to see him redeemed, and we don't need to see him resurrected out of the butt out. It's fine. He can be where he is, and I'm hoping that's why The Mandalorian exists as a television series, so that we're scratching that itch in a maybe more satisfying way, because Boba Fett wasn't actually a Mandalorian, and neither was Jango.
Yeah.
But this is actually a Mandalorian, and if we want to unpack that very wide breadth of knowledge that came from the Clone Wars and now make this into a live action show, I think this scratches that Boba Fett itch way better than Boba Fett himself would.
I mean, you got to figure out, like, what was it about the Boba Fett itch, right? I mean, I mentioned that earlier. Is it about what was unsaid about them, right? And that's what, back in those late, the 70s and 80s, we didn't have a lot of great geek content to consume, so everything was like hanging off, right? Lando Calrissian going like, haha, it's like the Battle of Teneb, and you're like, what happened at the Battle of Teneb? I need to know, right? And but it just made the world feel lived in, the same way that Tolkien, though, on the other end, like in Lord of the Rings, everything had a backstory, and you didn't need to read it, but it was there if you knew. And eventually you just kind of said, yeah, there's a story there, and I don't need to see it. And you get little nods of that in The Mandalorian, which is nice. But I think, again, to the show don't tell, a throwaway line here and there is fine to give breath to the universe, but every character doesn't need to make an appearance. And even the fact, like, if this clone, if some version of clone theory does come true, like, that is dipping deep back into the lore of episodes, 2 and 3, which are definitely not fan favorite eras for the adults that are probably enjoying this. Kids enjoyed it, those, because that's what they kind of grew up with. But they're going deep, and I'm real curious what's going to happen in episode 9 with, again, callbacks probably to episodes 1, 2, and 3, just like 7 and 8 already did to begin with.
So this is actually getting me excited, because I was saying last episode, the lab assistant, I didn't even notice he was wearing a Camino badge on his person, and I was saying that by the end of this season, we will see something that will potentially tie into the idea of Palpatine being cloned in Rise of Skywalker, and we'll see a little bit of synergy there between Yodito being some sort of clone of Yoda, and maybe Palpatine being some sort of clone of young Sheev, or early Sheev, OG Sheev. Maybe that could be an inventive way for them, because I know that Disney Plus, Kevin Feige said that he wants the Marvel shows to kind of cross over with the movies as they're going. So I don't know if that's their plan with the Star Wars films as well. But
I don't know if they're going to, I can't imagine they're going to try what they did with S.H.I.E.L.D. Like S.H.I.E.L.D., between S.H.I.E.L.D. season 1 and Winter Soldier and season 2 was probably some of the most incredible television synergy that I've seen happen. But after that, it stopped. It was, they'd make a nod here and they'd talk about the event in New York, and that would that was about as far as it would continue to kind of be. And I can imagine that this will probably make reference and be part of a larger world, but I don't think they're going to probably connect, especially since you've got another 25 years gap between when this is and the next film kind of kicks in with The Force Awakens. That's a pretty decent amount of time to kind of do any of that. I do know in the extended canon that basically Force users cannot be cloned, was a lot of what they kind of established through a lot of that, which is why you don't have a lot of clones. In the extended Legends canon. And Timothy Zahn's series had the cloned Jedi,
Skywalker.
Well, not Luke Skywalker, but Jorah Saboeth, who was the kind of insane Jedi Sith user type person that was in the Timothy Zahn series. So most of the time, cloning Jedi and Sith didn't go too well.
I would love if there was something next Wednesday, which is the day before the Rise of Skywalker. That episode that comes out on that Wednesday, it would be cool if there's a little nugget. It doesn't need to be like a clone. It doesn't need to be like a Palpatine reference.
Or after, either before or after, right? Because you're going to learn something in 9, and then you go into the episode, and they kind of connect, which is exactly what happened with the S.H.I.E.L.D. episode, when all of a sudden the whole Triskelion fell, and S.H.I.E.L.D. turned out to be full of Hydra agents. And the next episode on TV, right after the movie, was all of a sudden it was Bill Paxton revealing that he was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of that. I was like, that was amazing. Like 3 days later, the beats hit right up. So that was pretty cool.
They're like, guys, we peaked for the next season. There's a quota where we have to speak about the event in New York once every episode, and that's all we got to do.
That's it.
I think Disney has more incentive now to do that kind of stuff again, and I think that's why it fell off, is because they realized Disney Plus was was coming, and they did not want to do some kind of big, elaborate thing, and then have it not be their own property. Right?
Well, I think
now
also,
it's just on one thing. It's not on a TV network. It is, you can't get it on iTunes. It's there, and they're like, if you want to see the thing that ties into the other thing, you got to get our Disney Plus.
Yeah, I think there's also the aspect that, I mean, of course, we had the Netflix situation where there was the Marvel shows on there, so you can make that as a counterpoint. But the fact that they're doing a streaming television show. It's essentially a movie, like 3 movies chopped up into 8 episodes for each thing, whether it's going to be, WandaVision or Falcon and Winter Soldier or Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. They can more easily plot out an entire overarching story and get ideas of why there'd be some sort of resemblance to a movie that's coming out in some way or another, whether it be like apparent or background sort of themes or whatever. As opposed to when you're doing it on like ABC, where you have to have, each one has to be 30 minutes. It has to have a 3-act structure within the 30 minutes, and we have to be able to like hit these points. So
have act breaks and everything.
Yeah, there's a little bit more flexibility there, I think, for them to do what maybe they initially really wanted to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. and some of those Netflix shows as well. So we'll see. Yeah. My hopes are there.
Well, I'm curious if they were where the sequencing behind the scenes is that if they knew that they'd greenlit the Obi-Wan series, if they decided to say, hey, well, we're going to let's build the set of Mos Eisley even better than we might have now that we need it for the Obi-Wan series, and we can do some stuff with that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not up on what's next on Disney Plus. Is something lined up for after the new year to keep people's interest? Not Star Wars, but
I think it might. The next big one might be Captain or Winter Soldier and Falcon, but I'll have to check.
And there's a Loki series as well.
I think all the Marvel stuff is pretty far off.
Oh, really?
Because I'm wondering if they're going to fall into the HBO disease where when the Game of Thrones season ends, people cutting. And I'm wondering if what's next,
Yeah, I'm scanning right now. I mean, I think so. Falcon is late 2020, according to this site.
Okay.
WandaVision is early 2021. Loki is early 2021.
Oh boy. Okay.
What If is mid 2021. Hawkeye is late 2021.
So it's What
Star
If.
Wars stuff is even
show.
later than that, right?
And then there's a whole bunch of TBAs with She-Hulk, Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel. So I think you're right. I mean, granted, I don't rewatch a lot of the stuff like all the old shows. So after this, I don't know what else is there on here to keep me on.
Yeah,
That's So Raven.
That's So Raven. Yep. Yeah. But unfortunately, I'm not a huge rewatcher as much as I have nostalgia for Rescue Rangers and DuckTales and Darkwing Duck and Gargoyles. There's so much good new content that I have to watch the new stuff over rewatching old stuff from my youth.
Yeah. Well, I think The Mandalorian, this might set us up for coming in for a landing, but I feel like The Mandalorian is really showing a new path that Disney can take with developing Star Wars moving forward. Like, I think everybody has their own opinions about how this new trilogy has been as an experiment for Disney taking a shot at the new Star Wars franchise according to their rule. But I think this, and I've liked them thus far. We'll see how Rise of Skywalker goes, but I've liked them. But we're seeing some difference in terms of the focus here with Mandalorian in terms of having a little bit more of an interest in some fan service, whether that be apparent or not. Having a little bit more of a grounded take in terms of putting things in some familiar spaces, other new spaces as well, creating new characters and new culture within the lore, and also making it about essentially an unknown character too that doesn't really have any true links to any established characters aside from the fact that he wears familiar clothing. So, I mean, I think they're going to be using Jon Favreau as a godfather of sorts moving forward to help guide things. I know that they're having Kevin Feige do one movie with Star Wars as well. So I think they're really trying to take things in a direction with this Mandalorian attempt. Now that it seems like it's a success, they know how to keep understanding, like, we can keep making Star Wars stuff that doesn't have to be about a Skywalker. We can do something with a new character that is in an interesting environment. They can still have aspects of the Force, but the Jedi don't have to be main characters, and we can just play around. And it's doing really well. Non-super hardcore Star Wars fans are liking it. The internet's going crazy over the meme that's been created by Yodito. Yodito has potentially usurped Baby Groot, in fact. So that's pretty impressive. So I think it's a great experiment. We'll see. I think that this influence will be kind of felt in all of the Star Wars content to come.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so startlingly different than what else has been out there, which I think most people then are kind of just stunned that something like this is existing is part of it. And from as diehard of a Clone War and Rebels fan, Resistance is garbage. But as big a fan as I've been in those series, they have too many filler episodes or too many campy episodes to fill in for what is a lot of really great, serious character building, universe building stuff inside there. And I think Mandalorian is doing that as well. It's saying it's what's here. And even inside some of the books that have been coming out from these authors in the Star Wars universe, they can't really move. They can move a bunch of chess pieces around on the chessboard, but no one gets to take any pieces because they can't. There's no stakes for Rey or Rose or Poe. None of those characters can die. None of them can happen. So, there's no stakes. It's not like picking up a new fantasy or a new sci-fi series, like The Expanse or something, where I don't know what's going to happen with these characters because it's its own thing, backed by a series of books. So
it's a good point. With the main Star Wars Marvel that was in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and is now going to launch between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, the stakes are very low because I know that those people are going to make it out.
Right. So what they do is they fill in these interesting gaps in the comics and say, how did Darth Vader find out Luke was his son? Yeah. And it's a great, cool arc, right? It's a really neat arc. But they have to introduce new characters like Dr. Aphra and that crew because they're like, cool, I can do whatever we want with them. They get a spinoff, they keep going, and they're super cool. And that's what ends up happening. Even things like the Galaxy Spot, the Black, Destiny's Edge spinoff, which was only five things, was a nice, fun little way. So, the places where you're playing with characters that are new to the universe, I'm finding those more interesting than saying, what's Poe up to next?
Sure. I think one of the big things with the Poe comic is it's filling in a lot of the after the Last Jedi moments on the Millennium Falcon that are missing. So that feels really good because that's them talking again, just oh wow, that was that was crazy what just happened to us.
What a ride, guys.
Yeah, what a ride.
Wow. Let's get shawarma.
Exactly. It was their shawarma moment there. All right, so we do this at the end of every episode where we say, are we bringing this in cold or are you bringing this in warm this episode? So let's start with our guest. Are you bringing this episode back warm or cold?
Looks like we might have lost him.
I think he's cold.
We brought Ryan in cold. All right, Chris, you first.
Freeze-dried. I brought this in warm. Oh, it looks like we're getting him back.
There he is.
Yeah. Frozen in carbonite, mate.
I brought this in warm because I liked the scene where they kind of team up to go after the bounty. I thought that was pretty fun. But I feel like there does need to be a little bit more some more interesting moments, something that can really bring some awe and into the show, back into Star Wars, but bringing it in warm.
He's bringing some awe more than awe, because there's been plenty of that. Patrick?
You know what? I think I'm gonna bring this one in cold. It's tough. It's a tough decision for me because part of the reason I'm bringing it in cold is we were gonna do this episode, and I was saying to myself, like, wait, what was the episode about again? And that's not a good sign. Like, the fact that so much of the detail of it, aside from boy band and Amy Sedaris, it's kind of hard for me to kind of rustle that back up. So it's a great show. It has the potential to be incredible. But right now, I think it's just focusing on some really safe beats and not doing a lot in terms of development. And that's the kind of stuff that I think people remember watching episode to episode, is not just the set pieces, but like what more did we learn about the Mandalorian? And we haven't really learned anything, and he hasn't really learned how to keep that Yodito on his ship. So unfortunately, cold. I'm hoping we can heat things up in the next episode.
Ryan, you bringing this one in warm? You bringing it in cold?
I'm giving it one Hoth.
You're giving it one Hoth. Okay.
One Hoth, right? No, it's not one Mustafar. No, this one definitely was cold for me. It was a bit of a dud. Got to the end, and I was just kind of like, oh, well, that was an episode.
Yeah.
That was it, right? And even my kids were like, "That's it." So I think we're hopefully we can't stretch this out for a whole season for 8 episodes of glacial pacing, and I think we're gonna need to kind of show a little bit more. And if we're grasping it at tiny little Easter eggs and little footsteps, it's gonna be hard to kind of do this for a second season at least at the same pace.
So I guess that leaves me. So I was going to bring it in cold, but talking about these little details with you folks have made me warm to this. So I think, or maybe I just peed my pants. I'm not sure. For some reason, all the little details do it for me. It was the same thing for the last episode where I thought it was kind of a dud, but for some reason, the red-eyed ATST was like, okay, yeah, I'm okay, I'm in. The red-eyed ATST coming out of the woods was
Nick's
really cool.
A cheap date.
Was cool enough for me to get back in it. But this one is a little bit more subtle. I think the way that we just saw Mos Eisley without people freaking out about it, like it wasn't like, oh, because imagine like Finn walking down Mos Eisley, it would be like, this is like where Han Solo got his start. Like he would have said something like that.
Yeah.
But it was just like, we're just there to do something and get out. But like the visual aid was kind of cool. Having Ripley, Amy Sedaris, awesome. Having the boy band guy seem out of touch with the narrative, but then die in that episode was a plus. And the idea is that I think the overarching story arc need of our lives has been something born of the mid to late 2000s. I think it's basically like since I've been a Lost fan, I've felt the need for every show to have some big thing, and then when it goes back to being like the X-Files, where it's a very formulaic episode and we do this one thing in this episode, and then there's one big kind of like mythology with the smoking cancer man or whatever. I actually kind of like this. I think this is kind of like a little bit of a refreshing feeling of every episode is going to be wrapped up into kind of a little bow, and it might not be entirely open, and we maybe make the same mistakes in the next episode where we leave Baby Yoda behind again. But it's almost kind of like back to network television in a way that I like.
Your X-Files callback is a good one, right? They had their Creatures of the Week, and they had their Smoking Man throughputs, and I think that's a good nod. So yeah, I could see that for sure. I think knowing those shows were 22, 26 episodes in a season, and we've got 8. Yeah. They need to be a little hotter, kind of across the board if we're if we're concerned. And it's less about me that I'm concerned. I can put up with a bad episode. There's plenty of bad animated episodes out there for the Star Wars stuff that's there, and but I get worried when fans, the fans that could start to peel off, and then Disney goes, okay, then this is only going to be a 3-season show or a 2-season show, and then they start getting more lukewarm on some of that. That's more where this kind of gets, right? When does it start to peter off for some fans?
I can dig that, and I'm not trying to get argue anybody out of their feelings. You feel the way you do about this, but like I feel differently after kind of looking at like how fun this episode was, and maybe it didn't really go much anywhere, but I feel like there's still this endless optimism that the next one's going to be even faster.
And part of my feeling right now is that I feel this way not knowing how the season ends. The season ends, and I feel like I have a decent grasp of there's a characterization of the Mandalorian, and there's details that are there that like were interesting and developed. Like I like that. If it feels like we're just treading water just to be like, look, we're in a Star War. Look at this Star War every episode, then I'm going to be a little frustrated, because as fans, I think we all know the potential of the world of Star Wars and the characters there. And when we feel like they're not being executed in a certain way or with the pace, especially with the 8 episodes, as Ryan said, it can be a little concerning. So.
Yeah, when we look at this, we could look back at the Shrimp Hatchery planet as the same as I think of the Chicago episode of Stranger Things 2. Like, you didn't need it.
Oh.
But all right, so we'll wrap it up here, guys. If you can find us on the internets all over the place, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever. But give us a good review, especially if you're liking the Mandalorian reviews. But we got lots of things planned for this just very blessed Star Wars December. Thanks again to Ryan. Ryan, what do you want us to? What do you want to plug? Where should people find what you're into?
Sure. So you can check out more work that we're doing at edgeoforion.com. We got a lot of great stuff going on. Our next fan film that we're working on getting our support for is a Lord of the Rings fan film called The Gem Seeker. So look for some of that if you want to check that out. And then see where our Star Wars fan, No Easy Target, is currently making the rounds around the country.
Nice.
Go check it out. All right, everybody. It's a wrap.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Lights out.